Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidi. The time is 9:38, and I think we're going to moving into a very, very important topic this morning on News and Views. We'll be turning to a voice of conscience, someone who has consistently stood at the intersections of faith, justice, and humanity. We'll be speaking to pastor, social worker, and activist Nigel Branken. Our conversation today is framed by, I think, grief, by sacred outrage, and by urgent moral clarity. Just days ago, the Higher Presidential Committee for Church Affairs in Palestine issued a searing condemnation of what they describe as a heinous crime and a direct affront to Christians and to humanity. The bombing of the Al Ahli Arab, also known as the Baptist Hospital in Gaza City, by Israeli forces. This assault, carried out on Palm Sunday, targeted Gaza's only Christian hospital, a place of healing that has served the people of Palestine for more than a century. And according to the committee statement, the strike not only obliterated critical facilities like the emergency ICU and a pharmacy, but also took the life of a 13-year-old child during an emergency evacuation. The committee warns this is not an isolated incident. It is part of a deliberate campaign. I think at this point we can all agree that Palestine and Gaza's healthcare system has been utterly destroyed and obliterated. 34 hospitals have been destroyed, and as I mentioned, the healthcare system and facilities also completely decimated, and just the broader Palestinian population also subjected to what they term a systematic campaign for extermination. So they hold an international community and especially the UN Security Council complicit in their silence, and that's why today this is not just an interview. Nigel Branken is not here to speak for himself only in response to this unfolding catastrophe. He has also gathered voices of mourning, resistance, and prayer, and most importantly, protest from across the globe. He joins us now on our virtual platform to help hold space for collective truth-telling and also sacred disruption. Nigel, thank you so much for joining us on News and Views this morning. Really, really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Salilo. I'm really looking forward to this time, and actually, even just your introduction has made me feel a little bit emotional. It's true. I didn't want to just do an interview for me. I really wanted to find a space to bring the voices of my friends who are all grieving. We've been attending protests and we've been attending disruptive actions, and everywhere you go, people are speaking, and we're not alone in the struggle. Sometimes it feels like we're alone, and it's just kind of some people speaking out. But so I've gathered some voices from friends on Facebook, from WhatsApp. I sent out messages. I said, I'm speaking to Salam Media. What would you like to say? Particularly in relation to this this bombing of this hospital, which is horrific.
No, definitely. And I want to touch on the hospital itself, Al Ali Arab Hospital. What's its significance? Why is it so important, and what does it tell us about just this broader attack and this at this point, you can't even find the correct words to describe what we've seen in the past year. But just on this hospital in particular, what's its significance? Why is it so important to speak on it?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, you're right. It is very hard to hear this. The significance of the hospital is that every hospital matters, just like every life matters in Palestine, and yet it's somehow in the telling of these individual stories, when we home in on what this story is telling, we see the value of the individual, and we think of the bombing of all the hospitals, of all the medical workers, of all of the, just last week, the ambulances buried under the ground. But Ali Arab Hospital, it's not just a medical facility. It was a sacred space, like all of the hospitals. It was run by, this particular one used to be run by the Baptist Church, and it was handed over to the Anglican Church a few years back, and it served the people of Gaza for over a century now. Christians, Muslims, Jews, people, all people of faith, any people, regardless of their faith, And the bombing of a place of healing, it's not only a war crime; it's moral desecration. It's really going to the bottom of the barrel, and it's like just when we think that our morality can't get any worse, Israel does this. So maybe just I could read a couple of things that some of my friends have said, specifically
yes.
concerning this. So one of my friend Mohsin Omar, who is he's a refugee from Kenya. He's fled violence in his own, and he was in fact the first person when I put out the call, my first friend, and he said, my heart aches with deep sorrow and outrage as Israel admits to bombing the Al Ali Arab Hospital, a place of healing and sanctuary that should be protected. My other friend is a doctor in South Africa, a trauma doctor. Her name is Roseanne Simmons, and she said, you can imagine a trauma doctor, you see a lot. But she writes and she says, witnessing the desecration of hospitals, sacred spaces of healing, the murder of over 1,000 healthcare workers in Gaza, it's been unbearable. It proves genocidal intent. And I know she's involved in the organizations where they organize doctors to stand for Gaza. And then I've, another one that really struck me of a friend. This is a refugee from Uganda. Her name is Reverend Golden Barney. She's an Anglican priest, and who transitioned, and because of her gender transformation, has come and sought refuge in South Africa. And I think if anybody articulates suffering the most profoundly, it's those who are most marginalized. So she says, as a trans woman priest from Uganda living in South Africa, she said, I mourn with Gaza and pray for justice with every breath. Life must be sacred everywhere. You just hear that call of, marginalized people working on the front lines, and just saying, where is mercy? Where's the accountability? Why is Gaza being forgotten? Why is the bleeding just continuing? Why are people just allowing this to happen? My friend Tanya, Tanya Gardner, she's a member of the church I go to, and she said, my heart cries out, how long? It's like the psalmists in the Bible used to say, how long, oh Lord, till we see justice? We're praying daily for, she says, I'm praying daily for the oppressed people of Gaza. I think that's it's this longing inside of us. We want to see justice. We want to see an end to this. We want to see this must stop. We've got to find ways for it to stop.
Yeah, and I think very, very powerful and very emotional responses that I think we can all echo at this point. When does it stop? And one thing that really stands out is, Israel has moved from denying the attacks to openly now justifying them. What does this shift in rhetoric tell us about the political climate, and what are people in your networks also saying about the response from religious and global institutions?
I think if one thing has happened since in the last 2-3 years, it's that the emperor's naked. We're able to see Israel and the Hasbara for what it is. We're able to see their propaganda for what it is. Every time we see the same trajectory, see the same pattern breaking out of first they deny it, then when there's evidence of it, then they say yes, but Hamas, and now they're just blatantly accepting it, and there's absolute impunity, and this backing by Donald Trump. It's very scary for the world. The complete breakdown of international law, the complete breakdown of our ability to stop it. So it's dangerous. I think we have the silencing of these powerful institutions, especially the religious ones. In my circles, I come from evangelical church spaces, and I just see silence. How can we be silent? I think of this Palm Sunday of people not being allowed into Christians, 44,000 Palestinian Christians not being allowed into Jerusalem, you know. And you think of what Palm Sunday represented of Jesus coming in on a donkey into Jerusalem, and it's not about security, it's about Zionist exceptionalism. Anyway, let me go to what my friends have said. You know, my friend Kevin Rutter, he runs an organization that deals with patriarchy, and he said this. He said, every morning when I wake up, I wonder why there is this abiding silence from the Western Church on the genocide in Gaza. He says, stop weaponizing your Bible to justify what is clearly ethnic cleansing. Remove Jesus from under the rubble. I just say, from his lips to the ears of God, may that prayer be heard, that the church would speak again, you know. Another friend, Cha Mapele, he says, I've only one prayer to God. Please make Israel and the US pay for their unimaginable cruelty to the people of Palestine. Let it be in my lifetime. And I remember, you know, during apartheid, that was our refrain. Apartheid in South Africa, well, our refrain was, in our lifetime, let us see freedom. You know, that prayer. My friend Husina Sadat, a Muslim woman, she says, I feel debilitated. How many of us feel that? We all feel that. We feel like we just can't do it. We feel immobilized. She says, just sharing truth to the world. She's very active on social media. I constantly see her posting about this. You know, she says, I'm so sorry, Palestine. I'm so sorry, Palestine. My heart bleeds with you. Your pain and sacrifice, I promise you, will not be in vain. Somehow, you know, people of all faith, we've got to rise up and we've got to say that as we hear the cries coming out of Gaza, you know, one of the theologians I read when I was studying theology was a guy by the name of David Bosch. The UNISA library is named after him. And he quotes Alan Lamb, who says, Vox Victorum Vox Dei. The voice of the victims is the voice of God. The voice of the victims is the voice of God. The echoes that are coming out of the pain in Palestine are calling us all. It's God's voice to us. It's inviting us to participate in the struggle for a free Palestine and a free world, as all of these struggles are interlinked. But as you can hear, I'm a pastor, so I better not preach too long.
No, I think this is great, you know. And we're running out of time, and I might not go through all the questions that we had prepared for. But I'm going to ask, I think, be a bit selfish and ask for myself. You know, as a Christian, we have a very, very auspicious and very sacred couple of days coming up. You know, for all Christians in South Africa, across the world, leading up to you know, Good Friday, as we all, you know, call it, and, you know, practice it. What message should we be taking, you know, to these very auspicious, very sacred, you know, coming days, especially having Palestine in mind, as Christians? What message should we be taking to these very, very auspicious couple of days coming up?
Now, I wasn't prepared for that question, but I think it's a question that's been running through my heart. I think it's the question. It's, you know, where are we in the genocide right now? And I don't think it's just the call to Christians. I think no longer can we argue that our faith gives us any moral high ground. It's our humanity that we need to respond back to. So whether you're Muslim, Jew, Christian, atheist, Buddhist, whatever your understanding is of spirituality, the morality that's calling us is a morality of liberation of the world. And you know, last week I was involved with two disruptive actions. The one was at Pick n Pay, and we all know Pick n Pay Norwood had this Pesach display that they put up, but they didn't put up any Pesach symbols. They didn't put up the, you know, the candles. They didn't put out the bread. They put up the symbol of this white cloth and this blue cloth and a blank space, and then the Star of David, representing an Israeli flag. And I've seen these debates going on on Facebook and people saying, "Oh, but it's Pesach," and we have to disentangle our faith from nationalism. In America, we're seeing the rise of nationalism, Christian nationalism. In Israel, we're seeing Zionism, which is nationalism, and it's the co-opting of these symbols of our faith. And if we think about Pesach from a Jewish perspective, Pesach was about the liberation of the people from slavery in Egypt. Pesach, Passover, Easter, it's a holy season, and it should be about the liberation of people from the injustices that we're experiencing around us. So people of faith, people of humanity, it's time for us to have our moments to rise up and to disrupt. I think there's a lot going through my heart in the moment in answering that question. I also think, and I want to throw this in, because I do think that we need to move from, just at the moment, I don't know if you can see, I'm wearing this Palestinian scarf,
Yeah.
And many of us have done that. We take these days when we protest, when we go to events, we wear these symbols of our solidarity, and that was our protest. And we thought, okay, then we stood on street corners and we lifted up signs, free, free Palestine. We sang the songs, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. We shouted out, we said, stop the genocide. And nothing has worked. We continue to see people being slaughtered en masse. I read last week in the paper about human shields, and the Israeli government, the Israeli army, using on average 6 human shields per day of Palestinians as they go in. It's their standard operating practice. Everything that they've said that the Palestinians do is not only mostly a lie, it's the very thing that they do, and it disrupts our humanity consistently. And so, I'm going on here, but I'm a white person. I'm a man with privilege, and I grew up in apartheid, and monstification took place of me in apartheid. So there was this dehumanization that took place of me. I was taught through the microaggressions in the world that Nigel Branken I'm a white, heterosexual, Christian, tall, English-speaking man. I have every single social standing that taught me when I was growing up what supremacy is about. And I think the question I have to ask is, how do we liberate people from their supremacy? And you know what? In 1994, when Nelson Mandela came in and the ANC took over this government and we had our liberation, it wasn't just the oppressed that were liberated. It was me, my family, my descendants, my children. They go to schools now where they could be equal, where they could engage with humanity again. And that was through armed struggle. It was through resistance. And we see so much dehumanization of Palestinian resistance. We've got to stop that. We've got to speak out against it. There's so much to say. I don't know how to end this except to say we have to rise up. We've got to move beyond just doing the wearing of the stuff to actually getting involved, beyond just protest, into disruptive activities. We went into Pick and Pay. We stood at the tills and we just said, Roshan Dadu from BDS got up and she just made this profound, you must go see BDS's Instagram page and just watch that video of, she made this customer service announcement disrupting what was happening in that space. We did the same at the concert at the Linda Auditorium on Saturday. We went in and we disrupted that space. No normal music, no apartheid music in South Africa. We can't allow just the normalization. We can't allow the silence. We've got to disrupt. And so my theology, in answering your question, my theology is having to adapt and to say, I'm not just going to be, inverted commas, non-violent anymore and simple, polite Nigel, because simple politeness services the agenda of the oppressor. It doesn't service the agenda of the oppressed. Politeness is not what's needed. Silence is not what's needed. Silence is complicity. Politeness is complicity. Standing outside the grounds of Pick and Pay and just protesting outside nicely in comfort and convenience, that's just, it's not disrupting. We've got to find ways to push into spaces. We have to side with the oppressed more. I think that's the call for all of humanity now, is to find ways to side with the oppressed and to disrupt and to break the sale of coal to Israel, FIFA, Israel. I mean, they got rid of Russia almost immediately when they declared it a genocide. But now Israel's still in FIFA. We've got to disrupt these spaces. We can't allow this to go on. We've got to fight. Sorry for taking up so much time, but thank you for the space as well.
No, definitely. Thank you so much, Pastor Nigel Branken, for chatting to us. I think, it's very, very important to always engage in these conversations, because it almost feels like we are in a new chapter of this genocide. I always reiterate that it feels like we're in this new chapter of this genocide. The reemergence of Donald Trump has made things way worse. And, the people who are in solidarity with Palestine, people like you and me, doesn't matter from what fronts, whether black, white, Christian, Jew, Muslim, we need to now start to rethink our solidarity. As you mentioned, going out to the corner of the streets with our kafirs and singing Free Palestine doesn't seem to cut it anymore. We need to disrupt. And I think that's very, very important. And I think that's how we're going to close off our interview. Really, really appreciate it. And always a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, and have a great day, and blessings and a great season to all of your listeners.
Thank you. That was Pastor Nigel Branken. And I think, very important points, eh? Very, very, very important points. And I think that's my key takeout from that conversation, that we need to rethink our solidarity. Granted, the wearing of kafirs, going out to the streets, going to number 1 Santon Drive, that it does help. It does raise, solidarity. Those that might not know what's happening, they might stop their cars and ask you, what's happening? How do I get involved? That's important. But we need to rethink. We need a solidarity that's tangible, that makes a difference, that you can see and touch. We don't have to start big. I think something as simple as what the BDS is trying to do, boycotting products that are from Israel, holding organizations and companies that are still doing business with the Israeli government, that are essentially funding this genocide. I think we can start there. The singing, the clapping, and jumping around, we did it. We did it. And as Pastor Nigel Branken mentioned, people are still being slaughtered. Children are still getting decapitated. Mothers are picking up limbs of their children. They have to mark their children with numbers, to make sure that, if one hand goes missing, at least I can read, well, that's my handwriting, that's my number, and then I can pick it up and, go bury them with dignity. That's still happening. So rethink. Try be a bit more disruptive, as Pastor Nigel has said. The time of being polite, being nice, it's over. And if we don't do anything, I think we can all agree that we're also complicit. Going to take a quick break. News and reviews will continue after this.